Good morning, everyone. For Telesur English, I'm Cody Weddle in Caracas, Venezuela. Thanks for joining us on From the South this Monday morning. Our top story takes us to Guyana. That's where government officials there say that in the following hours, they expect the arrival of a UN team to mediate in the Essequibo border dispute with Venezuela. Now, following the 1966 Geneva resolution, both sides agreed to resolve this dispute diplomatically. The United Nations team will evaluate Venezuela's claim to the oil-rich region. Now, in September, both countries recalled their ambassadors due to the dispute, but in late September, during the United Nations 70th General Assembly, Guyanese President David Granger and Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro agreed to send their ambassadors back to their respective diplomatic missions. Elsewhere around Latin America, Bolivian President Evo Morales and UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon stressed the importance of international commitment to tackling climate change and poverty. Now, the comments came during the People's Conference on Climate Change in Bolivia. The Ban and Morales inaugurated the Ban Ki-moon Villa Coliseum. Morales urged nations to back his proposal for a new model of civilization that de-emphasizes consumerism and emphasizes shared responsibility for the planet's environment, culture, and life. Ban commented on poverty and gender equality.
I promise to eradicate extreme poverty by 2030. United Nations promise to achieve gender parity, gender equality by 2020, including indigenous people.
The Brazilian city of Rio de Janeiro has seen a spike in violence this year. More than 4,000 people have been killed in that state. Now, activists and NGOs recently staged a demonstration to call attention to the increased rate of homicides there. Now, many of the victims died wounded by stray bullets from shootouts between police and suspected drug runners in Rio's favelas. The founder of the NGO Rio in Peace, Antonio Carlos da Costa, said that a country preparing to host the Olympics should not have so many violent deaths.
The idea behind this demonstration is to draw the attention of our public authorities to these deaths that don't have to happen. The numbers are absurd, and a city that wants to host the Games in 2016 can't allow so many people to be killed in this way.
Now we go to Cuba, where 14 private U.S. planes have landed there for the first time in decades. Now, this is just another sign of the normalizing of relations between the two former Cold War foes. The planes landed in Varadero, a beach famous for 12 miles of white sandy beaches. Cuban Aviation Club President Ernesto Adlum said more collaborative projects are in the works. In July, the U.S. and Cuba reopened embassies in each other's capitals, but President Raul Castro has said normalization of relations will not be complete until the U.S. blockade on Cuba is lifted, among some other demands. And now we're going to take a look at some of the other stories making the news around the world.
Chose a new prime minister to reunite a country profoundly divided over a fresh constitution by a vote of 338 out of 587 in favor. The new leftist leader will also have to deal with crippling fuel shortages and kickstart the reconstruction of the country after two devastating earthquakes. The leader of the Communist Party, Kipe Sharma Oli, begins his term as the first prime minister elected under the country's new constitution.
It's good. It's positive. And the responsibility and trust which I got, I fulfill that wholeheartedly with my heart and mind, with the cooperation of other parties and MPs and leaders and the people. Thank you. Thank you.
Belarusian President Alexander Lukashenko was re-elected to a fifth term with over 80% of the vote in his favor. Voter participation was 86%, according to the country's Central Electoral Commission. Lukashenko has governed the country for over 10 years now. Many experts say Lukashenko has been taking steps toward improving ties with Western countries, including pardons for 6 opposition leaders. But the leader himself said Russia remains Belarus' closest ally.
We will not only remain a friendly country as we are now with our Russia. This is brotherly and the closest country to us, and you can be sure about it. I tell you that at the presence of Western journalists.
Turkey's government is now blaming the Islamic State group for the double suicide bombing in the capital Ankara that killed at least 128 people. The opposition is blaming President Tayyip Erdogan for the worst terrorist attack in Turkish history. Government officials said the attacks would not be reason to postpone the November general elections. Thousands of people took to the streets after the bombings and called Erdogan and police murderers.
We heard the sound of an explosion from where the pro-Kurdish People's Democratic Party convoy was arriving. Everybody was running away and my comrade Ziya Saygın was trying to calm people down. When the second bomb went off, two people behind me were ripped into pieces and my comrade Ziya collapsed into the ground and died shortly after.
Israeli forces kill a 13-year-old boy in the latest violence attack Palestinians in the occupied territories. Israeli security officers have now killed 24 Palestinians since October 3rd. An Israeli airstrike killed a Palestinian mother and her daughter in the Gaza Strip. Local Palestinian sources have said Israeli forces have also injured about 1,900 Palestinians in the last 9 days. Things are expected to worsen as Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu announced the recruitment of more security forces to repress Palestinians. Peaceful elections also took place in Guinea, where voting counting is currently underway and expected to take a few days. Millions of people went to the polling stations in the West African country's second free election since its independence from France nearly 60 years ago. President Alpha Condé is expected to win the vote, although a second round is more than likely to be required. Condé won the first democratic elections in 2010.
On the lighter side of the news this morning, we have the story of 2-year-old Filipina girl Zayan Garcia, who has become an internet sensation there in the Philippines. Now, the toddler can hold her balance for several seconds on her father's hand. Let's check this out. She lifts her legs in the air to do a Superman pose with both of her arms stretched out. Garcia's parents were cheerleaders when they were in high school and later in university. Zayan has become famous and featured on national television there.
The way we trained her is to make it seem like playing. She listens, she's amused, and she really enjoys it, because if she didn't enjoy it, we wouldn't do it, and she wouldn't be able to perform those stunts.
She looks exactly like the big girls, the big girl cheerleaders. Good for her. Looks like she has a future ahead of her, maybe in cheerleading. Thanks for joining us this morning. We have plenty more on all of those stories and others at our website, telesurtv.net/English. For Telesur English, I'm Cody Weddle. Have a great Monday. Have a great week.